since the last election, we've seen some high-profile instances of interpersonal conflict between council members, both on and off the dais. What do you think is responsible for that, and how do you think you'll try to heal some of the divisions on council and improve communication between council members?
Tough subject, isn't it? You witness our meetings. It's true. There's been more contention. I can't speak to the intentions or motives of others. I don't know that. I know what my heart is. I know what my intentions are. But when certain behaviors are exhibited that become disruptive to the sense that they take the focus off the issue we're working on, and it appears as though, I say appears, it's a personal point of accomplishment as compared to solving a problem, it causes one to lose trust. We can't understand intentions, but we can observe a behavior or behaviors. And when I see negativity, not difference of opinion, but information being put out that's just wrong, factually incorrect, or statements being made at council, factually incorrect. And I've documented some of those this last year when I said, you're wrong, please check the minutes. And those statements get out there. That's very disruptive. That destroys unity because then people don't know what to believe. They'll read one thing in the paper, for instance, but they heard something different because the paper's not going to print something that's not true. For the most part, we make mistakes, but there's a difference there. And that causes lack of trust, and that dissolves unity. Without trust, meaning you know what you're talking about, you're giving good information, it's honorable. You're treating people in a safe manner. You're being truthful with them and respectful. And you do what you say you're going to do. And you're doing it for the right reasons, trying to move things forward. But when actions speak differently than that, it gets very confusing. So the way I deal with that is personally, I confront it. I'll have discussions privately on an issue. If that doesn't resolve it, I might bring it up publicly within our council group. I would much rather bring it up in a council group and discuss it amongst ourselves than sending you an email saying, you need to look at this, or somebody needs to do something because somebody's being whatever. You try to resolve that together. And doing so otherwise, or not doing so, leads to greater decrease in trust, more mistrust, and less unity. So it's something we have to work on. But I think people have to be accountable for themselves. What are your motives? What are you really trying to do? And I think as a council, we need to have those discussions and then ensure that our behaviors are consistent with what our expressed intentions are. Otherwise, we definitely would destroy trust and the ability to work together. So I'm not afraid of having those discussions, but I think those discussions need to be held in a proper manner as well. Be able to build resolution and not destroy whatever trust there might be. It's an ongoing process, day by day. We have to become more trustworthy as individuals if we're going to be trusted as a body. Does that?
Yeah.
No?
I think it does. And my next question was going to be, as mayor, would you like to do anything different in terms of guiding the city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
There's a lot of things we'd like to do different. I think when we recognize how this pandemic came upon us and the information at times, in other words, situational awareness, the information we had last March is a lot different than the information we're working from today. And I think our city, our county officials, county health officials are working under the guidance of the state. I would have preferred guidelines to be suggested for the benefit of all compared to mandates, but that's hindsight. I just happen to operate best by that principle. I would rather ask people to do certain things in the best interest of all than arbitrarily make mandates. But again, back at the time with what we're dealing with, I don't like it to get into second guessing. I think they have been working to be responsible about the county, or the state, the county, and our city in particular. But the city has really been following the lead of what the county has been directing us to do. But again, I prefer guidelines and education versus mandates. Mandates to me are a last resort. And I think we might have imposed those perhaps not in the best manner. But again, who knew what we were working with back in March when everybody was telling us this wasn't going to be such a serious issue, including our Centers for Disease Control. And things have turned out to be much different. So I think it's the important thing is to trust each other and work together and be open and transparent with that. Agree to disagree, ask the right questions. There's no hard question, there's just good questions. The answers are easy as well if you're truthful. Getting information sometimes is hard. It takes time, but it's there. We can get to it. We can make good decisions together. So I'll be interested in seeing how we move forward as we work through this. That's what I'm more concerned about. How do we emerge from this pandemic as a vibrant community? If we take our eyes off the essential elements that I mentioned earlier, and we overly focus on a section of what's going on, temporary, dangerous, but temporary. If we take our eyes off the long-term picture, we could end up with more serious issues. So it's striking that right balance, continuing to look forward as we work through this current situation. And I think the best way to do that is what I've been seeing, much better communication the last several months than, say, the first few months. But we have better data as well now.
And you think education and to the extent that the city does issue guidelines to businesses or citizens, you think guidelines is a better strategy than mandates?
I think mandates have a place when we're in crisis management. Guidelines and people understanding the impact consequences of the situation. Most people are going to take that step to doing the right thing. We're all about one of two things in our lives. We want to survive and we want to thrive. There's not a citizen out there that doesn't have those concerns. We want to survive and we want to thrive. And when the pandemic first hit us, we went into survival mode. But we need to be continuing to think about how are we going to thrive through it and come out at the other end of it. So it's a balance. It's not a perfect equation. It takes skill. It takes emotional composure. It takes people with experience that have been through crises before, knowing that there is an end, there is a light at the tunnel, and they have the willpower and the experience and the skills to work through that process and not shut down out of fear. We need to be concerned, but we have to move forward. We have to address the issues that people want to survive and they want to thrive, including our businesses, including our school system, including our families, including people that employ people in town. I don't believe anybody is intentionally trying to make things worse. I think we all have the same goals. We might need more education, and more motivation at times, but I don't think anybody is out there trying to make things worse. At least nobody that I work with.
And the next question that I have is a bit of a pivot.
Wait, is he paying extra for all these questions? He's getting...
So,
Max, I appreciate your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. What role do you think the city council should play in guiding or controlling growth in Loveland?
Controlling
growth.
If an organism isn't growing, what happens to it? It dies. Every organism is in a state of decay. Once we're born, after that, it's pretty much downhill. There's a timeline out there Unless, what happens? I know, it's such a happy thought, right, Jenny?
Positive, yeah.
Such a positive thought, but it's reality. So what do we do about that? That's real, isn't it? Aren't we all in a state of decay? Every individual. So what do? One thing we do is we make health clubs a really popular spot because we intercede, we take action to delay that decline. We take action. We pump energy into the system, whether it's our body through exercise, nutrition. Why is nutrition so popular? We're trying to stem the decline, and we're trying to grow what we can. We grow muscles. We grow healthier blood vessels by eliminating cholesterol. We do all sorts of things on that. Individually, personally, my wife works out 5 times a week. I'm amazed. My daughter's 7. I walk 3 times a week and play golf. I get a lot of exercise fishing. But we take care of de-stressing. We do things to intervene with the stress of life. Communities need to be doing the same thing. I came from a community I had a business in, my first business that I owned in 1976. My wife and I were 2 young pharmacists that somehow put a few nickels together, got out of school like most people with debt, no money, but we were in love and married and we didn't see any problems. We put the energy and we bought a business in Minnesota in a small town, and I think the population was like 1,018 people. It's one of those numbers you remember. Colorado has elevations we remember, right? Small towns have population numbers. And we ran that business for 5 years and tripled its size and loved the community and very involved in the chamber and all sorts of good things. And developed a tremendous tourism event that brought millions of people to that little town of 1,000 people over 40 years. By the way, that was an event that everybody said, it can't happen. We've never done anything like that here before. And besides, it's going to ruin our town, too many people. After 5 years, I sold that business, my wife and I moved back to Illinois, and I went to seminary for a while, and then got back into business. You know how many people live in that town today? About 1,000. Main Street's gone. My drugstore's gone. It's a gift store, open 3 months a year. There were 2 grocery stores. There's 1, maybe 1.5. But the town hasn't gone anywhere. There's no reason for people to want to live there other than to retire and die. There's no activity to speak of, economic activity. There's no reasons for the children that they raised in their home and went to our schools to remain in that community. They leave. There's a lot of towns like that. And when I first moved to Loveland in 2006, I remember it was the year we had a lot of snow. It's December, and there's a huge snowstorm around December 30th. And it was like really deep snow, and I'm thinking, Jenny said, what did I get myself into? This is worse than Chicago. So the snowstorm, and I drove downtown. First week of January. And I looked and I said, oh my goodness, what did I move into? This town is like the one I left in northern Minnesota. That's what it reminded me of. Now it's December. I bought my house in August, or October, in this fall. And I hadn't seen downtown. I'd seen the newer areas of town, in Fort Collins and the area. And I saw things that attracted me here. I saw new development. I saw new development in older areas. I saw retail clusters. I saw services. But then I saw downtown. And I said, I hope the rest of the community is not going this direction. I hope this downtown area is going in the direction that other parts of the community are heading, which is growth. Smart growth. Controlled growth, but not over-controlled. We see what happens in some communities where they over-control it, What happens to the cost of living? Go look at the cost of housing in Boulder as an example. But I think for a town to be vibrant, it has to be growing. It has to be putting things back into it because there are some things naturally going to leave it. Businesses will move on. Markets shift. Are we attracting the right businesses to town? That's the question. Are we filling primary employers, for instance, that make the pie bigger for those of us in town? Are we filling the gaps in services for our citizens, or is it just a redundant multiplication process? I don't think we need too many more Blockbuster video stores in Loveland. That time has passed, hasn't it? But what are we going to replace that with so people have jobs and the services that they need to have, they want to have, so that they want to be drawn to this community and stay here? That's what we want. It's not just growth. We want stability. People want stability. They want to feel secure. They want to feel secure in that they have their jobs. They want to feel secure that they have fire and police protection. They want to feel secure in that they can count on the services they and their families need. That's how I view growth, Max. The bigger picture, rather than an isolated Blockbuster store or whatever it might be. What's the intent behind it? What are we trying to accomplish? And in my mind, it's stability, because that creates security and growth. The right type of growth enables that to happen. Any other questions, Max?
I have one last one.
One last question.
All right.
Now hold them to that, Jenny.
And you can answer this in however much detail you want. But how would you like to see Loveland change over the 2 years of your mayorship if you do become mayor?
Great question. I think I might have answered it a little bit in some of the other questions, but let's see if I can keep this one short to the point. And Max is going to say, that'll be a first. I'm used to having 2 hours with a room full of people, and I get to write on the board and move and do all sorts of things. So this is a challenge. Max, I think one of the biggest challenges facing the city right now is developing a collective vision of who we are becoming. If that question isn't answered, we will become like a ship on the ocean without wind. We will drift one way or the other on whatever tide comes up or some changing issue. I have seen very little attention in the last 3 years given to that question. What are we becoming? And the question then is, how can city leaders, and I don't mean just council, but all of us in the city, how can we develop that and work towards that? There's no perfect path. It's going to wander like this, but at least we have a path that we're all on the same page. And that's how you create unity. In a previous council, there was a councilor, her and I probably never voted on a national issue the same way. Probably never once. I hit my golf balls to the right. I got a horrible fade, and she tends to have a pull. She'll hit them to the left. Kind of way our politics might go. But you know what? We sat down before we were even elected to council and had that discussion. Where are we heading? What are the things that we need to tackle together in order to get to a solution? Even though we're going to arm wrestle, and I'm going to beat you every time, she said to me. We developed a great relationship that wasn't based on partisan politics. It was based on what is best for Loveland. From our different perspectives, we continuously created solutions, options, choices that people could make heading in that direction. And I think that's the biggest challenge we have right now. Not just in Loveland, but in our nation. If you have to win through might, that's by force. That tends to dissolve unity, not create unity. We need to bring people together, create that collective vision, develop an action plan with flexibility, and get moving, and bring people along with us who help create that plan. That's our biggest challenge in the next 2 years. We made great strides in that. This last year, for instance, see, I'm getting longer again, aren't I? We created a strategic marketing plan for the state. Didn't have one before. We worked 3 years to get that done. Fiscal resiliency plan. Worked 2 years to get that through. Working with other counselors to make that happen. I can name a number of other issues that took time. Budgeting process, 3 years to work through to understand that issue, to really try to determine what we need to do. Because you know what's missing? We still don't have an investment strategy for the city. We're operating year to year. We kick the can down the road. How is that in the best interest of citizens 5, 10, 15 years down the way? Our unfunded needs continue to grow, and there's projects on there that should be funded. But we got to come to a decision on that collectively as a community and not have to have that battle every 3 years or 2 years or 5 years, whatever it might be. We have to come to an agreement on what our objective is. And then we can develop a plan on how to get there. But we got to come to agreement on that objective. And that to me is going to take a 2-year challenge. That's a 2-year challenge. So that will be a primary focus that I bring to the table. Good?
That's it.
And I didn't destroy your expectations. I took 5 minutes for that 30-second answer. But I appreciate you asking the questions, and I appreciate everyone sending your questions in and help formulate what I think is a good kickoff meeting for this next election. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your participation, our Zoomers, and appreciate your willingness to help support me moving forward. So thank you.